Welcome to another edition of the JerseyYorkPhilly and More Roundup, where we break down everything happening on weekends in the sports world across the tri-state area and beyond. I'm your host, John Cordell, bringing you all the latest action, insight, and stories you won't want to miss. Starting off with Friday, the Buffalo Sabres took down the Bruins 4-1 in Boston to punch their ticket to the second round. In the early going, the Sabres cashed in on the odd man rush with Alex Tuch getting credit for the goal. The lead was extended later in the period on a shot from the point and through a screen by Mattias Samuelsson. Less than 2 minutes into the second period, David Pastrnak would score his third goal of the series on the one-timer to cut the lead in half. Buffalo would get major insurance from Zach Benson in the following frame, and an empty netter would finish the job. Buffalo is moving on for the first time since 2007. Heading west to the Delta Center, the Vegas Golden Knights were victorious over Utah, also moving on with a 5-1 win at Salt Lake City. After scoring the double overtime winner in Game 5, Brett Howden picked up right where he left off and got the first goal of Game 6 to quiet the crowd. In the late stages of period number 2, Mitch Marner blasted home a slap shot past Karlovic-Melka for a 2-0 lead. The Mammoth would get one back in the third, but the offense did not have any answers from that point on, as Vegas scored 3 straight to put the game away. The Knights will take on the Ducks in the playoffs for the first time in franchise history. Switching over to the MLB, the Philadelphia Phillies hung on to win 6-5 over the Marlins at Lone Depot Park. Despite falling behind early, the Phils knocked in a couple in the fourth to take their first lead of the game. In the seventh inning, Philly put up a 2-out rally with 4 runs coming through, including this towering shot by Bryson Stott, standing as his first of 2026.
Fly ball right field, hit pretty well. Casey going back toward the wall. It is gone! Into the bullpen! 3-run home run, Bryson Stott. Lefty on lefty, and the Phillies have opened it up, and they lead it 6-1.
Audio courtesy of the MLB on YouTube. Despite that, the Phils bullpen allowed the Fish to get right back in the game, with Otto Lopez making an impact with 2 RBI singles in 2 innings. The drama would not go any further, though, as Brad Keller would get the save. Moving to Anaheim, the New York Mets started off the road trip on the right foot, defeating the Angels 4-3. Following a 2-run first inning, a throwing error by Francisco Alvarez would allow the Angels to take a 3-0 lead in the third. However, the Mets offense would wake up in the 6th inning as Alvarez redeemed himself with an RBI knock and would come around to score on a game-tying hit by Marcus Semien to break out of a slump. The big boom would come next inning on this solo homer by Ronnie Mauricio.
And Ronnie smashes one to deep center field. Back goes Trout, takes a look, and it's out of here! Ronnie Mauricio with his first home run of the season gives the Mets the lead in the 7th inning.
Audio courtesy of the MLB on YouTube. Devin Williams found his groove on the mound to close the game for the Mets. Finishing off in the Bronx, the New York Yankees won 7-2 over the Baltimore Orioles in their first meeting of the season. The Yanks drew first blood, but the O's responded back in a quick way as Pete Alonso went yard to the opposite field to knot things up. The Bronx Bombers would make an appearance in the second inning with a couple of dingers, including a skyscraping blast down the left field line by Jose Caballero and yet another line drive blast to right field from Ben Rice. The Yankee bullpen would only surrender an additional run and easily got their 21st win of the year. Moving on to Saturday, the Philadelphia 76ers won Game 7 over the Boston Celtics to complete the upset and move on to the second round. 109-100 was the final score at TD Garden. Philly came out swinging to take a 13-point lead after the first quarter. The Celtics would narrow the deficit before halftime, but the Sixers went right back to work offensively, with a healthy Joel Embiid leading the way. Boston pulled closer again, but Tyrese Maxey made back-to-back layups in crunch time, including this one to take a 5-point lead.
Oubre right back to him. Maxey again to the rack. Another dose. Tyrese is taking over.
Audio courtesy of ESPN. Philadelphia will take on the Knicks in a tri-state rematch from 2024. Switching over to the NHL playoffs, the Carolina Hurricanes took the first game of round 2, defeating the Flyers 3-0 on home soil. It took just over 90 seconds for the Canes to draw first blood, coming from the hot hands of Logan Stankoven. Later in the period, Jackson Blake was able to power through a couple of Philly defensemen and score a beautiful goal to extend the lead. The Flyer offense was quiet, but they held their own defensively until later in the second period, when Noah Juulsen made a bad turnover in his zone to allow Stankoven to cash in again. Freddie Anderson made 19 saves for the shutout victory and a 1-0 series lead. Moving on to the MLB, the New York Yankees won 9-4 over Baltimore to take the series at home. Cody Bellinger had a very productive day at the dish, getting an RBI in each of his first 2 at-bats with a home run in the second and a double in the third. Pete Alonso went yard again to put the Orioles on the board, but Trent Grisham counterpunched with a goner that drove in 2. Bellinger homered for a second time, but the O's would make it a ball game in the 7th inning. The Baltimore defense would let them down in the bottom half, though, as the Yanks would tack on 3 more to provide cushion for the win. Heading over to the West Coast, the Los Angeles Angels walked off the Mets with a 4-3 victory in extra innings. Both teams exchanged an RBI knock in the early stages of the game, but a perfect inside-out approach by Vaughn Grissom would allow the Halos to go up by 2 in the 4th. Just 2 days after being picked up from waivers, Andy Ibanez made an immediate impact with a sac fly in the 7th, which led to Tyrone Taylor driving in the tying run. Plenty of runners in scoring position were left stranded on both sides until the bottom of the 10th, when the former Yankee Oswald Peraza had his moment.
Another 0-2 on the way. Peraza lays it left center. It's falling. It's down. Say goodnight to the Mets and put it in the books. The Angels take away the 7-game losing streak on a long last. Hit the big hit. Oswald Peraza ends it.
Audio courtesy of ESPN. Wrapping up with the Kentucky Derby, first place was awarded to Golden Tempo, which made Sherry DeVoe the first female trainer to have a horse win the Run for the Roses. In the closing stretch, the jockey Jose Ortiz got the most out of his Golden Tempo horse to outrun Renegade and the rest of the field to get the trophy. Although Renegade was favored to land in the top 4, Ocelli was a long shot who got 3rd place, as the horse was 0 for 6 in races going into the day and only got another shot due to a last-minute scratch. And finally, a 2-trainer combination would help the horse of Chief Wallaby claim 4th in the Derby. Shifting into Sunday, the Detroit Pistons completed the comeback and avoided the upset with a 116-94 win over the Magic at Little Caesars Arena. After a tight first quarter that could have been favored either way, Detroit would erupt with 40 points to the next frame, including a strong finish by Tobias Harris to keep Motown up by 11. The momentum would certainly carry over to the defense, as Orlando was held to just 15 points in the 3rd and eventually trailed by 25 points later on. Once trailing 3-1 in the series and by 24 in Game 6, the Pistons have won their first playoff series in 18 years. As for the Pistons' opponent in Round 2, that was decided last night as well, with the Cleveland Cavaliers taking down the Raptors 114-102. The majority of the first half was led by Toronto until the Cavs tied it up before halftime. They took this mentality out of the locker room, buzzing in the 3rd quarter by outscoring their opposition by 19 points to pull away for good. Jared Allen would drop 14 points in that frame, and he tied his game total of 22 points with his teammate Donovan Mitchell. A massive rebound advantage would only give more fuel to Cleveland as they head to the conference semifinals for a 3rd consecutive season. We switch over to another Game 7, this time within the NHL. The Montreal Canadiens have punched their ticket to the 2nd round after beating the Lightning 2-1. With pressure against them on the road, Habs captain Nick Suzuki led the charge with the opening goal. Dominic Smith would tie things up in the 2nd period on a tipped-in power play goal. Just past the midway point of the 3rd, Alex Newhook put together a spectacular goal by batting the puck out of midair for the Montreal lead.
Here's Hudson with a shot, stick aside by Vasilevsky. They score! Banking off the goaltender Vasilevsky, and the Canadiens take a 2-1 lead. What a play by Newhook!
Audio courtesy of the NHL on YouTube. The Canadiens were down 29-9 in shots, but somehow still won the game as they move on to play Buffalo. Shifting gears to Major League Baseball, the Philadelphia Phillies won 7-2 and took the 3rd game of the series in Miami. Chris Paddock had a rough start to his day after giving up 6 runs in the 1st inning. The Philly bats would simply put the ball in play to score the first 3, but when Bryson Stott came up, his presence became known early after 1 swing.
Fly ball, right field, hit well, going back, Stowers out toward the wall, he jumps, it's gone! Home run, Bryson Stott! It's his 2nd 3-run home run of the series! And the Phillies jump out to a 6-0 first inning lead.
Audio courtesy of the MLB on YouTube. That was practically all the Phils needed, as Jesus Luzardo was dominant on the mound, reaching double digits in strikeouts and not walking a single batter. The Phillies have won 5 of their last 6 games with Don Mattingly as the manager. Wrapping up in the Bronx, the Yankees were victorious once again with an 11-3 victory against the Baltimore Orioles. Early home runs came from the bats of Ben Rice and Aaron Judge, who continue to stay hot at the plate. An infield single by Leody Taveras would spark the O's to tie the game, but New York returned fire 2 innings later on a knock from Ryan McMahon that could not be handled at first base. However, when the 8th inning rolled around, the Yanks would plate 7 runs to put it away. This was highlighted by Jason Dominguez starting it with his first homer of the year and ending it with an RBI double from the other side of the plate. And that'll do it for this edition of the Jersey, York, Philly, and more Roundup. Thanks for tuning in as we've covered all the action from around the tri-state area and beyond. I'm John Cora, reminding you to stay locked in, stay passionate, and we'll catch you next time with more of the stories that matter most in sports.